Can you hear the fault in this chord progression? If you couldn't hear the fault, don't worry, that's what you're about to learn. And more importantly, you'll learn our rule for fixing this fault in the chord progressions you've already written and avoiding it in the progressions you'll write in the future. But first, tea.
Hello revolutionary music makers, I'm Kate Harmony, this is Ray Harmony, and welcome to Hack Music Theory.
The fast, easy, and fun way to make music.
If you're new to theory, or if you just want a refresher, then read our free book, 12 Music Theory Hacks to Learn Scales and Chords.
You'll be able to instantly apply these hacks to your songwriting and producing. So head on over to hackmusictheory.com right after this lesson and download your free PDF.
Alright, it's time to open your DAW to Hack Music Theory.
Firstly, just to clarify, a fault is not a mistake. A fault is a weakness. In other words, an area for improvement.
So, what's the fault in this chord progression? Well, the chords are jumping all over the place, up and down, and that makes the progression sound like a beginner made it. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with the actual chords in this progression, but the chord changes sound really abrupt and disjointed. In other words, the progression doesn't flow at all. And of course, if for some reason you want your chord changes to sound abrupt, then leave them as they are.
And by the way, our example is in the key of G Mixolydian, which is all the white notes from G to G, and the tempo is 105 BPM. If you're not familiar with the happy but serious Mixolydian mode, you can use the mode hack in our Songwriting and Producing PDF.
Okay, so how do we fix this progression and make the chords flow smoothly into each other, instead of abruptly jumping up and down when they change? In a word, inversions. An inversion is just a fancy word for when you rearrange the notes in a chord. You see, if you have 3 notes in a chord, you can play that chord in 3 different ways.
For example, let's take our root chord G major. You can play the notes in the original order of G, B, D, or you can rearrange the notes and play B, D, G, or D, G, B. Same notes, same chord, just inverted.
The different inversions have different names, but those aren't important. What is important is learning how to rearrange the notes in a way that makes your chords flow smoothly into each other. This hack will instantly make your chord progressions sound super creative and professional.
So, how do you do that? Well, it's all about emphasizing the similarities between chords. In other words, we need to emphasize the notes that are the same from one chord to the next. These notes are called common notes, and they act as powerful links that connect chords.
Let's take the first 2 chords in our progression as an example. Our first chord is G major, which consists of the notes G, B, D. And our next chord is E minor, which consists of the notes E, G, B.
Now, when we compare these 2 chords, we find that they actually have 2 common notes. So these 2 chords are literally 2/3 identical. Yet, when we change from G major to E minor, it sounds abrupt and disjointed.
The reason for this is because we're not making the most of their similarities. If we bring attention to their common notes, it will sound like the G major chord is effortlessly melting into the E minor chord, making that chord change flow beautifully.
So how do we bring attention to common notes in a chord change to make it flow smoothly? Easy, you simply rearrange the notes in one chord to make their common notes line up. In other words, the common notes should be in the same place within the chords. That's what creates the powerful link that connects chords. In our example, G and B are common notes, but we can see that G is at the bottom of the G major chord and it's in the middle of the E minor chord. So we need to rearrange the notes of one chord to get G in the same place within those chords.
In the E minor chord, if we move the E up an octave, then the G is now also at the bottom of that chord, like it is in the G major chord. And that also lines up our other common note as well, because B is now in the middle of both chords. So, thanks to an inversion of the E minor chord, this previously abrupt chord change now sounds super smooth and professional.
Now that you know how to rearrange the notes in your chords to get their common notes in the same place, i.e. bottom, middle, or top, go through the rest of your chord progression and do the same for each chord change. Just a heads up though, there are a couple of issues you'll run into when doing this. Maybe not in your current chord progression, but these issues will definitely turn up regularly. The first issue is that the last chord in your progression needs to flow back around into your first chord. That chord change often requires a hack to make it flow smoothly. That wasn't a problem in this example because our chord progression actually ends and begins on the same chord, G major. But usually the last chord and first chord will be different, so you'll need a hack to make that chord change flow smoothly.
Then the second issue you'll come across is trying to make a chord change flow smoothly when the two chords do not have a common note. For example, at the end of our progression, we have A minor, which is ACE, changing to G major, which is GBD. Those two chords do not have any common notes. So, what do you do in these situations? You make a common note. Of course, that requires another hack. And we don't have time in this lesson to cover these two hacks as well, but if you want to learn them, they're in our Songwriting and Producing course. And the course also includes our Songwriting and Producing PDF that we mentioned earlier, so you'll get that too, along with permanent access to all the videos in the course.
So to conclude, our chord flow rule is that your chords should flow smoothly into each other by ensuring that when you change chords, there is at least one common note linking them, and that common note is in the same place within both chords.
Now let's have a listen to the final example. We hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for being here in the Hack Music Theory community. You are truly valued, and we're excited to hang out with you again soon.